In today's video, I'm going to try to answer two guitar building questions for you. The first one is, should you apply finish to the heel of a guitar neck before you install it into a guitar body? And the second is, should you or should you not radius the bottom of your fret slots to match the radius of the fretboard? I'm Chris at Highline Guitars, and I'm going to try to jump in and answer those questions for you. The first question, should you apply finish to the heel of a neck before you install it into a guitar body? It all depends on how you're going to attach the neck to the body. Now, there's basically two ways that you do this. One is to bolt it in, the other is to glue it in. Now, if you're going to bolt it in, I would highly recommend that you go ahead and apply finish to the entire heel of the neck. And the reason for this is because we want to try to seal the wood. When you apply finish, you're not only doing it to try to enhance the appearance of the wood, but you're also trying to seal the wood from airborne moisture, humidity. Humidity is the enemy of a guitar neck. If the wood of the guitar neck absorbs humidity, the wood is going to move, and it can warp, bend, or twist. And this can happen when the wood absorbs the moisture, and it can also happen when all of a sudden your climate gets really dry and the wood expels the moisture. So we use finish as a way to seal the wood to help prevent that from happening. Now, in truth, most of the products that we use to seal wood don't do as great a job of sealing the wood as you would like. We often think that applying an oil finish or a lacquer is going to seal the wood and prevent moisture from getting into it. However, when those finishes dry and are cured, they're still porous and they can still absorb moisture. However, we want to try to apply them in order to minimize the effect that the moisture will have on the wood. We want to try to choke off as much moisture from getting into the wood as we can. So we apply those kind of finishes. Now, there is a finish that does a pretty good job of sealing the wood. It's almost 100% seal. However, it's very difficult to apply for most of your small shop luthiers. And I'm talking about polyester. When applying polyester, you need specialized equipment, you need a specialized environment, and you need to wear the right PPE to help protect you from the toxicity of that product. So it's not something that a lot of small shop luthiers can mess with. However, we should still try to apply some kind of product to seal the wood, whether it's an oil finish like boiled linseed oil or tung oil, or a lacquer such as nitrocellulose lacquer or an acrylic lacquer. Those products will help at least minimize the absorption of moisture, which can mess with the neck's stability. And if you're bolting the neck in, there's no reason why you can't apply it to the entire heel. Now, some guys are going to argue that applying finish to the heel is going to somehow impede the sustain or the tone of the instrument. I would argue that the potential for that to happen is so small that you're probably not going to even notice the difference. And the only way you would be able to notice the difference is if you first made the guitar without applying any finish, play the guitar, and then take it apart, apply the finish, put it back together, and play it again and see if there's any difference. I can almost guarantee you're not going to notice any difference. It's just not substantial enough to warrant concern. But because moisture is so impactful to the stability of the neck, I think that applying it to the heel far outweighs any potential impact that applying finish would to the tone and sustain of the guitar. It's the lesser of two evils. If you're going to bolt a neck into the body of the guitar and you're planning on applying finish to the entire heel, before you apply that finish, you want to test fit the neck into the pocket, because you want to make sure that your clearance isn't going to be so tight that when you apply finish, it could make the neck really difficult to install into the body. If that's the case, too tight or snug of a fit could actually damage the wood of the guitar body. And this is really common with Stratocaster style guitars. We oftentimes will see in this area, in the cutaway, where the neck meets the body, that wood can crack. And that will happen if the neck's fit into the body is too tight. And if you haven't checked this before applying finish, you may find that when you go to install the neck, the fit is so tight that it can cause that wood to crack. And it can actually happen on both sides. And this is, like I said, it's really common with Stratocaster style guitars. So before you apply the finish to the heel, install the neck and see how tight the fit is. And if you're afraid that that's going to be too tight, you may want to take some sandpaper and sand the heel of the neck to increase the clearance enough to account for the addition of the finish. Now, of course, a lot of the finish that we apply to our neck and to the heel, even after a couple of coats, it's still pretty thin. But it doesn't take much to make a neck so tight that it will crack the wood. So just double check that before you start to apply any sealing finish to the heel of your guitar neck before you bolt it in. Hey guys, if you're enjoying this video, I would encourage you to click the thumbs up button down below. Do it right now. It's a great way to show my channel support, and it doesn't cost you anything. But if you'd like to take your support to the next level, you can visit my eGuitar Plans web store or my Highline Guitars merch store. There's links in the description below. And any purchase you make there is going to help support this channel so that I can keep making guitar building videos and sharing my knowledge and experience with you. You can also click the thanks button down below and leave a tip in the amount that you think is fair. But if you want to get the most out of my channel, I would encourage you to click the join button down below and consider becoming a member. As a member, you're going to have access to videos just like the one you're watching, but with a lot more information and detail, and best of all, no ads. Now let's get back to the video. However, if you're going to be installing the neck as a glue-in, or as they call it, a set-in neck, although glue-in I think is a more accurate term, you don't want to have any finish where the heel is going to be contacting the neck pocket in the body, because that will impede the performance of the glue. And it's important to understand that the glue itself will act as a sealer. So we don't want to have any finish on the heel when you're going to glue in the neck. And the reason for that is because of how wood glue works. When you apply the wood glue to the surface, what it does is it soaks into the wood and it causes the wood fibers to rise up. And then when you bring the two pieces together, those wood fibers will intermingle, and as the glue dries, they become interlocked, and that gives you an incredibly strong bond. But because you've applied glue to the wood is sealed. Now, there have been times in the past when I've made videos where I'm applying finish to a neck that I'm going to glue in, and I apply that finish to the entire neck, including the heel. And folks have called me out and said, why are you putting finish on a heel for a glue-in neck? Isn't that going to impede the performance of the glue? Well, yes, it would. But there's actually two ways you can deal with it. One is to mask off the heel so that you don't get any finish on those areas where the glue is going to come in contact with the surfaces of the wood. The other way is, once the finish is dried, you just grab some 100 grit sandpaper and sand off the finish where the glue is going to be applied. I like to do it that way because when you sand off that finish with like 100 grit sandpaper, you're also scuffing the surface of the wood on the heel, which actually improves the wood glue's ability to bond those fibers together. Also, if you mask it off, you've got to make sure that you're not masking off so that the finish is extending into the heel to a small amount. You don't want any bare spots on the neck where the neck is installed into the body. So I like to apply the finish and then just sand it off. It just makes it easier. And you get that great glue bond. So yes, you should apply finish when you're bolting in the neck, but you shouldn't apply finish to the heel if you're gluing the neck into the body. Now, as far as should you radius a fret slot to match the radius of your fretboard, every time I do a video where I show my CNC machine cutting fret slots, people will ask me that question. Do I radius the bottom of my fret slots? And the answer is no, I don't. In my opinion, there's no benefit to doing that. In order to do that with a CNC machine, you have to write G-code in such a way as to do that sort of a function. Some software programs, I think like Fusion 360, you can actually set it up to do that. But the programs that I use, Meshcam, for example, they might be able to do that, but I've never really looked into it because in my opinion, it doesn't make that much difference. And the reason it doesn't make a difference for me is because when I install the frets, I'm going to glue them in. Now, the advantage of radiusing the bottom of a fret slot is that once you press the frets in, the very bottom of your fret tang is going to rest on that radius all the way across. There'll be no air gaps. And air gaps can cause problems with frets. It can cause what's known as dead fret, where when you press the string down to that fret, it doesn't have that ring that you want. It just sounds dead. It can also cause a loss of sustain, and it might affect tone as well. So air gaps are a bad thing. But the way I install my frets, there are no air gaps, even though I cut straight across, the fret slots are cut straight across. What I do is I flood the slot with CA glue and then press my frets in, and that CA glue is absorbed around the fret tang and it fills that slot so that there are no air gaps. And I have no issues with dead fret because of that. So I don't think it's really necessary to cut radiused fret slots. You know, if you can do that with your software when you're setting up your G-code for cutting fret slots with a CNC machine, by all means, go ahead and do it. It's just not that big of a deal. And it's also important to remember, when you cut those fret slots at that radius so that they are in contact, the bottom of the slot is in contact with the bottom edge of the tang. If you do any kind of sanding work on your fretboard to remove tool marks and to get the surface really smooth, you could be making the slot ever so slightly shallower than it's supposed to be, so that when you press the frets in, the tang will bottom out in the fret slot and you're not able to get the fret to seat properly. So that's something to consider. That's one of the reasons why I stopped doing that. In the old days when I was cutting my fret slots by hand with a fret saw, I had a depth stop on the fret saw so that when I would cut it, that depth stop would hit the top surface of the fret slot or the fretboard, and I could actually get it to mimic that radius inside the bottom of the fret slot. But I found that so often it would cause problems with getting the fret to seat properly. So I just started cutting them straight across, leaving a little bit of a gap, knowing that I was going to glue the fret in, and that glue would fill that gap and prevent the gap from causing problems with dead fret and a loss of sustain. So it isn't necessary to do it. If you can do it, great. Another thing is to consider, if you tour a guitar factory, you'll notice that a lot of times to make the fret slots, they have machines set up, and they'll have either one blade, or they may even be set up with 24 blades if they're cutting 24 fret slots, and they're all spaced accordingly, and then they just take a blank and run it right across, and that cuts a straight fret slot. But then in most cases, they're gluing in their frets just like I do, so they're eliminating that air gap. So I hope that this video answers a couple questions that may have been on your radar over the years. If you found the video to be useful, please consider giving it a thumbs up. I say that in every video, and so few people actually click the thumbs up button, which I don't understand because it doesn't cost you anything to click it. And it also tells the YouTube algorithm what kind of videos that you like to watch. So you click the thumbs up on a video, YouTube will recommend more similar videos of the same or similar topics. So it's really beneficial for you to click that thumbs up button. And of course, if you want to take your support to the next level, you can do some of the things I mentioned earlier in the video. But as always, take care, stay safe, and I hope you'll be back for more guitar building videos.